The highlight of this of the discussion was, first of all, to see how engaged the African member states are with the Continental Free Trade Area. They have actually been able to internalize the importance of the Continental Free Trade Area in terms of realizing the regional integration imperatives of Africa. So I would say one of the major outcomes was the common understanding that we need to conclude the CFTA negotiations as indicated in 2017, but much more importantly, that we should all be ready to ensure that the implementation of the CFTA starts immediately.
The good thing about it is the negotiations have started. The modalities for negotiations have been agreed for both goods, trade in goods and services. So for me now the focus should be more on getting the agreement right so that it can be implemented by all member states.
The member states have given us very good feedback on a range of issues that we're researching on, doing policy advocacy, doing training capacity building and so on. And these issues all center around the economic integration of this continent. So we have talked about infrastructure, we have talked about investment, we have talked about regional value chains, including in the very important agriculture sector. We've talked about food security, we've talked about the challenges of Africa importing food to feed itself when we can provide that for ourselves. And then preeminently we've talked about trade. That trade is at the heart of economic growth, it's the engine of economic growth, and that we need to change the way that we trade on this continent. So we have talked about the Continental Free Trade Area, we have assessed the progress in the negotiations, we've looked at the challenges of implementing the agreement once it is finalized. What would happen on day one? After it is finalized, do we have a plan? How are we going to implement? So all these issues we have discussed, and it's been good and refreshing to hear the member states give us the ideas, validate ideas that we put to them, and challenge us to go further.
The fact that ECA is a research institution, sometimes in negotiations it helps to have evidence-based research where you are bringing the facts to the table. That way it helps even the negotiators. A number of papers have been presented, one on investment, the other one on regional integration on the continent. Land issues are very topical. Infrastructure issues, industrialization, all those are very important for Africa's development, very important for the CFTA, very important for Agenda 2063 and the SDGs.
I'm leaving this committee session encouraged that this is not a new thing that the member states are hearing. They have actually been engaged in it, and also they are aware that there are lessons to be learned from previous agreements that Africa has committed itself to, and so they are actually alive to the challenges that they are going to be faced with, and they could actually be able to identify some of the things that they need to do to ensure that the CFTA is optimized. But the third thing I think that was a highlight for me was actually the recognition of the member states that the monitoring of the implementation of the CFTA is going to be very critical, because that's the only way you can ensure that everybody benefits from the agreement.
We think that those what has been discussed here, the member states now are prepared to, I would say, work closely with the private sector to make sure that the private enough space is made also to the private sector, so that the public sector and the private sector work as one to make sure that we build this free trade area in an inclusive way, and we build it in a way that we get the most from our commodities.